Welcome to the Fighting on Film podcast, the podcast all about classic and obscure war movies, from the Normandy landings to the days of chivalry and swords. If it's been captured on film, we're going to try and cover it. I'm Robbie of RM Military History.
I'm Matthew Moss of Historical Firearms and the Armourer's Bench. Hello and welcome back to Fighting on Film. This week we are going to take a overview look at the BBC's brand new SAS Rogue Heroes series, which if you listened to our episode a few weeks ago, you'll have heard Rob give his thoughts and myself give some of my thoughts on the very first episode. But now we're back to take a look at the whole series. It's been out on BBC's iPlayer for a few weeks now. I think it's up on Amazon and a few other places if you're outside of the UK. So it's definitely out there already. So we can finally do our spoiler review and take a top-down look at the whole series.
Yeah, and before we continue, obviously, spoiler alert, if you're watching it on transmission, I think we're at episode 3 or 4. So spoiler alert if you haven't caught up so far.
Spoilers, the SAS were formed and did things in North Africa.
Yeah. So production, this was commissioned by the BBC and produced by Kudos. Now, they're well known for doing big budget BBC and ITV dramas like Spooks, Code 404, Broadchurch, Hustle. I think they did Life on Mars and Ashes to Ashes. So if you've watched a major British TV drama in the last, 20 odd years, they probably had a hand in it. And supposedly at the time of creating and making this, it was the biggest budgeted UK series of all time, apparently. Which,
wow,
I can't find an exact figure.
That's a big claim.
Very big claim. And it was filmed in Morocco. It took place from March to June 2021, with UK filming taking place in Norfolk, Suffolk and Gloucestershire in late June 2021. And then the series then spent a year post-production, came out a few weeks ago in 2022. But the border in Morocco was closed during filming, and that made the cast and crew a really tight-knit bunch. Some actors were only meant to be on set for a couple of days, but they had to stay there weeks because of the border closing. So when I was at the BFI screening, we learned all about that, and I think it really helped the production. It seemed like everyone was on the same page. Everyone had to really pitch in, and they became a real close-knit bunch of rogue heroes. I think it really helped the production. It was directed by Tom Shankland. He directed the horror movies Waz and The Children in 2007 and 8. Then he's worked on various TV projects such as Iron Fist, Punisher for the Netflix Marvel series, and his BBC work includes the 2018 Les Mis series and The Serpent. They were quite big when they came out, I remember.
Right.
But this is his first foray into the war genre. And when I was chatting to him, he said he watched some desert war films for inspiration, but he definitely wanted to use his own style for this. I remember him saying he watched all those sort of 60s, 70s war movies, and he was saying, fuck, they're so cool. And he wanted to have a little bit of that in there if he could. The series was written by Stephen Knight, who, if you don't know who Stephen Knight is, he's instrumental in creating Peaky Blinders, which became the absolute smash hit that it was when it was on. And then I think in its own way, that's why this series exists. I don't think if you don't get Peaky Blinders, I don't think you get Rogue Heroes, because it showed that a big historical drama can work, personally. And he adapted Ben McIntyre's book, SAS Rogue Heroes, as the basis for the series. But he also drew on testimony from the few remaining SAS veterans. I know Mike Sadler, he talked to him. And he said at the preview screening as well, he didn't want to pull too much from other fiction, as he thought the accounts and testimonies were enough. But I think he said as well that he would chop and change certain anecdotes to make them fit in for dramatic effect. So there's a scene where Alfie Allen, as Jock Lewis, throws the grenade onto the snooker table to make those lads go away, so they can look at the map. But apparently, yeah. So in the production Q&A, he was saying that was a real anecdote that he was told by one of the SAS veterans, and it was a real grenade. But he said that there's certain things that you hear, but he said you couldn't put them on TV because people wouldn't believe you because they're so larger than life. So he changed it that it was a dummy grenade. But apparently, according to him, the guy that he was chatting to said, no, that was a real grenade that was thrown, and all the lads ducked for cover. And then Jock and David continued their chat. It's just a great little thing there. Arms and equipment was provided by Bear Arms, and they're a company that was founded in 2015. They do military advising work, they do vehicles, they're a real sort of one-stop shop for historical and military advising on films. And Tom Shankland said about them, it's on their website, he said, shooting SAS Rogue Heroes without them would be unthinkable. The guys brought an incredible level of skill, knowledge, and professionalism to the project. They made an incredible contribution to Rogue Heroes. I think it's true, and I think it looks good on screen. Don't know what you think, Matt.
It does. We've got plenty to talk about later on.
Oh, massively. We'll come back to them in the alley tally for sure. The cinematography was by Stephen Persson. He worked on the Les Mis series with Shankland, the War of the Worlds BBC series, Inside Number 9 and Black Mirror. Lots of British TV work. Really, really good. I like the vision of this. I like the editing. I like the style of it all. I think it really sort of suits it. And yeah, that is mainly my production notes. Don't know if you had any more, Matt, before we go to cast.
Yeah, I'd add to that the military advisor was Bag Simmons, ex-Royal Tank Regiment, has worked on The Crown, Baghdad Central, and on the next Mission Impossible movie.
Oh, wow, cool.
Mission Impassable, that sounds like an interesting prospect.
Yeah, it does. Kasserine Passville, maybe. Mission Impossible. So, cast.
Yeah, so the cast is led by Connor Swindells, who plays David Sterling. And he's probably best known for his appearance in Sex Education, the Netflix show.
Yeah.
And Emma, the period drama adaptation. And I think he's going to be in the new Barbie movie as well, which is
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Okay.
Well, I'll admit,
also,
when I met him, I told him I hadn't seen him in anything because I hadn't seen Sex Education, but I was like, no, you're fab in this. So actually, I think he's really good at it. What can you say?
he also played a lieutenant in the Vigil series with Saran Jones, which was like someone gets murdered on a Trident nuclear submarine.
Yeah.
And he's a lieutenant on board.
Murder on the Subnuclear Express.
Yeah, it was weird. It was a weird show. Next up, we got Jack O'Connell, and Jack O'Connell's plays Blair Paddy Mayne, and we'll talk more about him later on. But I think he's brilliant in that.
Same, I think he's very well cast.
He's in the war movie genre. He's probably best known for Unbroken and 71, the Northern Ireland Operation Banner film. And next up, he's going to be appearing in the Enzo Ferrari biography movie, which should be interesting.
Yeah, it's come a long way since Skins, hasn't he?
Yeah, I suppose for a certain set of the listeners, Skins might be what you know Jack from best.
Yeah, definitely.
Sofia Boutella plays Eve, the French spy who becomes the love interest of Sterling. More to talk about with her character later on, but she's great for what she is doing in this.
Completely fictional, but she serves a purpose.
And underused as well.
Massively.
Then we've got Corin Silver as Jim Almonds. We've got Theo Barkham Briggs playing Reg Seekings. And I think he really inhabits that role quite nicely. I think he's got a big presence in the show, and it comes across really well.
He does.
And the other of the three main leads initially within the series is Alfie Allen playing Jock Lewis. And obviously Alfie was in John Wick, Game of Thrones, and a number of other things. Who else have we got? Tom Glyn Carney, who plays Mike Sadler, who is the only surviving member of the SAS, I believe.
He's really good as Mike Sadler, isn't he? Yeah. There's a great, listeners, if you haven't seen it, there's a really good Mike Sadler interview with the actor who's playing him, which was really nice to see. I think you can find that on.
Yeah.
There was a One Show, I think, did it? Yeah, go and see it.
It's on the BBC's YouTube channel.
Oh, right, great.
You can find that fairly easy. He was Peter in Dunkirk. He was in the Tolkien movie in 2019, and he was also in The King. He played Hotspur in The King in 2019. Yeah, so he's got quite an interesting background. Then we had, of course, Dominic West, who is about to hit prominence once again with the role of Prince Charles in the latest season of The Crown. And he plays Dudley Clark, who is the intelligence officer and spy master acting in Cairo. And he has a really interesting character, but it's kind of just gets buried.
It's just
but
truncated,
we'll talk about
isn't
that
it?
as well. Yeah. He's probably known for so many appearances in UK TV series. He was also in The Wire, I believe.
Yeah, The Wire. Yeah,
300. He was in one of the Tomb Raider movies. He's great in Brassic, which is a Sky series over here in the UK.
Yeah, Matt loves Brassic. If you ever,
I do.
If you ever have a drink with Matt, he'll be like, "Watch Brassic. You need to watch Brassic." I think he's got like a little wire to Sky production house, and they're like, "Mention Brassic again, Matt."
If Sky want to sponsor the pod, that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's been in quite a few different things over the years. He was in 28 Days. I think he was an extra in a couple of the Star Wars movies as well, because
he's
English
been in a ton.
Has to
be. He's fab though. He's really great in this as well.
He is.
Have a good role.
And then we've got Jason Watkins, who makes an appearance as Churchill. We'll round out the cast with a mention of him, because he's the least likely person you think to cast as Churchill, isn't he?
When I saw it, I was like, Jason Watkins, like that character actor. I was like, I can see it, but then I couldn't see it. And then when I saw it, I was like, yeah, like you're sort of there. Like you've got the mannerisms and everything else. Like, okay, I rolled with it. Fair enough.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a fairly big ensemble cast that's spread over 6 episodes. So it's definitely, hop over to IMDb and just enjoy the plethora of cast that this series has. It's actually quite impressive. But yeah, should we move on to the Alley Tally?
Well, no, before we move on to the Alley Tally, we've got a fourth hypothetical.
Oh, of course we do.
Yeah.
Because it's too soon for a
retro
archive review.
Yeah. Well, we thought we could have gone and found one, but we sometimes like to spice things up a bit.
Retro is 2 months. Is that not retro enough?
Well, the way history's going at the moment, it seems things happen so quick. It could be, couldn't it? But anyway, so if you're new to the pod, if you haven't listened before, we do the retro review where we seek out a review from the archives. Not this week though. We have a fourth hypothetical. So we on our Twitter, we ask a question and we just want the answer. So the question this week was: you can recast the series leads of Sterling, Mayne, and Lewis, but you can only use actors from the 50s and 60s war movie era. And we had some absolute crackers. We had so many replies. So I'm very sorry if we don't get to you. So leading the pack, we have Lost in Translation. He says David Sterling, Michael Craig from Sea of Sand, Blair Mayne, Andrew Folds from Sea of Sand, Jock Lewis, Richard Burton from The Desert Rats, or John Mills from Ice Cold and Alex.
Okay.
I see that.
A pattern will emerge here, I think.
It will. David McNay, he said David Niven as Sterling, Oliver Reed as Paddy Mayne, and Robert Shaw as Lewis. Then he put, and ... introducing Michael Caine as Mike Sadler.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the little Hill and Career reference there, introducing. Very nice. Then we had Brian Williams said Harry Andrews as the Orc or any other general.
Oh yeah. That fits.
Yeah. I thought if he's a little bit younger, because the thing is Harry Andrews, he never looks young, but he might have done a good. He might have done a good Mains if he could have got the accent right.
Yeah.
And then we had Rob Shipman said Dirk Bogarde for Sterling, John Mills for Jock Lewis, and Richard Harris for Paddy Mayne.
Bogarde's not tall enough.
Yeah, but you just shoot it properly, it doesn't matter. Bill 1940 Medal Campaign, a recurring contributor. He says Alec Guinness as Sterling, Richard Harris as Mayne, and Michael Caine as Jock Lewis.
Okay.
I see that. Yeah.
So early 60s Caine. Yeah. You could get that. Yeah.
Sean O'Keefe rattled the pack by saying Sterling, John Wayne, Mayne, John Wayne, Lewis, John Wayne. Do I get a prize for winning? And I said, well, the prize would be for the editor to make that work. So
you could have tall, thin 30s John Wayne.
That would be amazing. Just all different.
Stocky 40s Wayne as Paddy Mayne, and then I just don't see how the Duke could do Paddy Main's accent. I
That would be
would pay
amazing,
good
wouldn't it?
money to hear him try.
Yeah, I'm not even going to attempt to think
No,
what it would
don't even
sound
try
like.
and do
No way.
John Wayne doing Paddy
The
Main.
eardrums would burst. Then we had Lewis Hoskin. He says Lewis Stanley Baker. I can get behind that.
Okay.
Main Richard Harris, and then Sterling David Niven.
Niven's always a good shout.
Yep. Paul Hicks goes for Main Richard Harris again. That's a lot of them.
Mhm.
Sterling Dirt Bogard. That's another one. Richard Burton as Jock Lewis. And then we'll end with this one because we might be here all night because there's so many. Merrin Rent-A-Quill. She said Richard Burton, Sterling, Anthony Quayle as Main, Alan
Okay.
Cuthbertson as Lewis, and Clint Eastwood, Mike Sadler.
Clint Eastwood. Okay.
Yeah. I just like the idea of putting
doing an
Quayle
English
in.
accent. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe dub him.
Dub him. Yes.
Dub him. Yeah.
That'd be funny. Dub him with Richard Burton's voice.
Yeah, or dub him with Kane. And I like Quayle as Main.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was SOE, so it's
always
great,
like a bit of Quayle, definitely.
Do quality. I said quality Quayle casting. I was quite pleased with that one. That was some great discussion there. So we always love the FOF hypothetical. They always get the juices flowing, the creative juices flowing. And if you're not already, follow us on Twitter if it's going to be around for much longer. But follow us.
Also do follow us on Facebook and Instagram, just in case Twitter doesn't last out the year.
We're spread betting at this point, aren't we? We're like, follow the show everywhere.
We're also on TikTok. And we have a website. It's fightingonfilm.com. We haven't got a Mastodon account yet.
Hopefully Elon loves war films.
And as we always say, we haven't got an OnlyFans. And if you find us on there, it's an imposter.
Yeah. So Only Films was it? So yeah, Elon, maybe he'll find us and he'll love us so much that he'll keep the app going. But no, hopefully we'll be sticking around for a while yet. So maybe it's time for the Alley Tally.
It's time for Alley Tally on Fighting on Film.
We've got a plethora of interesting kit to talk about.
There's
here
a lot, isn't there?
You already mentioned the sterling work of the armoring company, and there's I can't imagine the difficulty of getting blank firing weapons into Morocco during COVID.
With a border closure, and all this other stuff that happened. The
majority of them being period correct and looking good, you know. It's impressive. So we got M1928 A1 Thompsons with the vertical front grip and the horizontal straight forend. We've got captured MP40s. Paddy has got a Beretta M1934 pistol at one point where he improvises a shower by shooting
that's cool.
through a
That's a
bucket.
very cool moment.
And he almost shoots someone during the rugby match or the football match.
He tries to, doesn't he? Yeah. Yeah. Lewis Guns, Brenz.
Mark 1 Brenz, thankfully. I think for the most part, I noticed a number of real rear drum sights.
I know there's a thing where people are like, oh, the LRGD didn't have them. But then I always think, well, there weren't a lot of pictures of them guys out in theatre, so one could have slipped through.
I'm not saying
it's
plausible.
completely
They're possible.
Wrong. It's plausible.
They're contextually okay.
You get the people that are like
ahistorical.
They didn't have Brenz at all, and I'm like, well,
what else? Lose bombs. Created by
Jock
Lewis, which we get a nice little montage of them explaining. They show him making them on a bench, and then he tries one, it fails. He tries another, and it explodes. But I would love to have seen more of that, of the development of that, and it being a short running sequence within that episode.
Would have been quite like you could have had it as a funny comic relief thing of it not blowing up, then it does, and then when it does, they all cheer because that's what it was going for, really. That's
what they got, but they could have had that built a little bit
would have been
stronger,
nice.
Perhaps. Really cool thermite Nobel 808 plastique and a bit of diesel. If anyone wants to know how to. The basic ingredient. I'm not telling you how to make a lose bomb. I'm just telling you the basic ingredients.
Disclaimer, Matt. Do not create explosives from this alley tally, please. Fighting on film have no responsibility if you
Fighting on film does
decide
not
to
condone the making
do
of
not condone
whiz
making of
bombs.
explosives in the shed at 3 a.m. and blow your house up. Don't do it.
Thankfully, not everyone will have access to Nobel 808.
Probably not. No. Thank God.
One thing I was really pleased to see in the first episode during Jock's raid on Italian positions outside of Tobruk, there's a Breda Modello 37, the medium machine gun, which is really lovely to see. That was a great detail.
Users, it's nice.
What else was there? I mean, later in the series, we get the arrival of the Vickers Ks.
Yes,
which we were all waiting for, and because everyone panicked, didn't they? Because they weren't in any of the promo images. Like, where are the Vickers K's? Like, they turned up in episode 5, I think.
Or was it 6? It was 6, yeah. Because Sterling has a line where it's like, "And wait till you see what the double Vickers can do."
Yeah,
I quite like that.
He talks about heavy machine guns as well, which are I think they're aircraft 50 calibers.
Yep.
He has a whole spiel, doesn't he, where he talks about armored windscreens
taken from
fighters,
fighter planes. Yeah.
Everyone's getting a new engine in their Jeeps. We're all getting new Jeeps. We're getting new trucks. It's when he gets that letter from.
Churchy.
He gets the signature from Auchinleck and Churchill, doesn't he? And he types up a letter saying, "Give the bearer whatever he needs."
Yes.
Blank check, basically.
And then they recreate the famous photo, don't they?
They do. I like that, as they're outside of the fort. One thing we didn't mention in production actually is that it was all filmed on location.
It was
in some actually gorgeous locations in Morocco.
Yeah. And I think because that 7-week thing, I think really helped. Or however long, I think it was a few weeks. I think it was 7 weeks. Can't remember from the Q&A. But I think that really helped it, because you could have got some establishing shots or whatever, and some shots of lads riding around and reused them. But maybe because they were kept there, it really helped. And I think it's gorgeously shot. Really well.
I love that fort location they had with the tower for the flagpole and the tents.
Yes, really cool. It felt lived in, didn't it? That's what I got from it.
The actual camp itself felt quite authentic.
Someone's looked at photos and then they've tried to recreate them. It's set dressing.
I liked how they mentioned the stealing of the piano from the New Zealanders.
That was cool.
I like that.
Yeah, it was nice.
There's lots of little tidbits in this that you can pick out if you have just like a cursory understanding of the SAS of the period. You can pick out little bits. It's kind of cool in that respect.
Like the uniforms as well. Lads got leather jerkins. Lads wearing KD uniforms. I like the copious amounts of Bedford MWDs that we get. The Austin trucks were lovely. And I think there's Rio trucks, American ones, because it's probably just what they had on hand. And there's an Opel Blitz as well. I think there's a couple of German half tracks.
There is, yeah. With MG34s,
yes,
there are no. There might be one MG42 that sneaks in the Crete sequence.
Yeah, maybe.
And you see it in the distance. There's two Germans talking. But there's front of camera. There's no MG42s. It's all 34s, which is lovely. That's a great bit of attention to detail.
But the thing is, I read somewhere, I think there's a comment maybe on Facebook, or maybe even on Twitter. Someone was saying, well, that they didn't have the right trucks. They got Rio trucks, so it's not good enough. But for me, I was like, well, that's obviously down to the limitations of the filming during all COVID and all that. But it reminded me of in the 50s and 60s when you get the Germans turn up and they're in American half tracks, or they're in they've got the wrong tank. Like there's an M60 pattern in this that stands in for a Panzer for like one scene in episode 6.
Yes.
And
they've done that thing where they wanted a practical tank
thing. Yeah, they didn't want to
rather
CG
than
it in.
stand in and CGI it in.
Yeah, of course.
So,
and for me, I thought, I mean, this is just me theorizing, but I thought that was a homage to those movies of old, like Sea of Sand. Like,
well, you could explain it away
the
as
Rat
that.
Patrol.
I was sat there doing the Leo clicking and pointing at the TV screen, shouting into their own bloody tank.
I know they could have.
I was enjoying it for that. I thought it was fine.
It didn't
they
detract.
piled enough shit on that tank to make it look
Oh yeah,
vaguely Panzer
yeah,
shaped.
yeah, exactly.
So
And it didn't
I
detract
could
from
forgive
me.
it because I enjoyed the show. I mean, we'll
Yeah,
reiterate this later on, but you can
sure.
forgive things, and that was one of them.
Oh, you massively can. And it's not like it's hung its hat on the. It's not like someone's come out and gone, "This is the most authentic thing that you've ever seen." Like no one's
No,
come
well,
out and
what does
said
it
that.
start every episode with? The little
The
preamble says,
disclaimer,
based
yeah,
on a true story, the events depicted which seem most unbelievable are mostly true. Like, there's a
yeah.
fun little caveat at the beginning of every episode. It's not a documentary.
No, it's not. Of course, no. I like the in terms of like set dress, set and all that. I really like the recreations of the air bases. They felt really real and
Yeah.
lived in.
Yeah,
They
I
didn't
mean,
just
they felt good. And a lot of
yeah.
those night sequences
A lot of day
felt
for
like
night. I know that.
felt like really felt like those 50s films where, like Sea of Sand and stuff, where they're infiltrating the ammo dump.
Yes,
And you got a lot of that feel, and
like Play
that was
Dirty as
really
well. Felt
fun.
like
Yeah,
that.
and Play Day and Tobruk and
Raid on
stuff.
Rommel
Yeah,
and all that.
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
You just get that vibe, and that came across really well. And I know it's a representation of similar, aspects of the war.
Sure.
But I liked it. I thought all of those sequences worked really well.
And the amount of firepower that they show, no other sequence in a series or film that I've seen that depicts this sort of jeep-based combat.
Mm,
Nothing else is in. It's in the episode 6. We haven't seen it. A Benia airstrip where Sterling finally goes in on a raid, and the amount of firepower they put out and how
mm.
they show it with the tracer going off and things being hit and holes tearing in tents and men being absolutely cut to pieces by double Vickers K's. That is such a striking little sequence. It's maybe a minute, if that.
Yeah.
The amount of firepower that it shows you that the SAS could bring to bear at that time of the war is staggering. I really think it's possibly the greatest sequence in the movie, and probably that's movie in the series. But that's maybe why they kept it for the end.
Well, yeah, it's the clear pinnacle of SAS operations, isn't it, in the desert? And the way they shot
the
it
level they're at then.
looks
Yeah.
incredible. It looked great. The only way you could have improved that is if you spent months on it and thrown $20 million at it.
Of course, yeah, exactly.
And it was for a huge budget Hollywood picture.
Even then, I don't think you'd have maybe got it as good.
No, you couldn't really. It just looked really good. It was a good mix of practical and CGI as well.
Yeah. And when Sterling says, "Is it like fan out like geese?" and they all go into like a arrow formation, so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just really everything's brought to a nice little close in that little sequence.
I mean, moving kind of into the favorite scene territory here, but that is one of my favorite scenes of the series.
Mm-hmm.
Not just for how impressive the cinematography and the choreography and the production on that scene is, but also the way that it represents or depicts rather Sterling and some of the other guys' realization of the carnage that they've created and the effect it has on them. So Sterling, as soon as he realizes the carnage that he's created, he's reveling in it in the moment. And then after that, he's like pale as a ghost, feels sick. I think it's Jacob McCarthy who plays Johnny Cooper, the youngest soldier within the group. Throughout that he's adding his tally onto his age. So they ask him, "How old are you now, Johnny?" And he says, "I don't include unarmed men in my tally."
Yeah.
Nice
little hard-hitting line.
Yeah. I thought that was good, and I thought that gave that scene a lot more weight, and I wasn't expecting it either.
No.
It kind of took me by surprise, and I appreciated that they did that, and it wasn't all about reveling in the success of the raid and the killing of the German air crews
nice
and the Italian
nuance
air
to
crews.
that sequence. Yeah. But then you get the scene with following up with Paddy and Sterling, where I think Paddy accuses Sterling of being like him towards it. And he goes, "Well, unarmed or armed, they're still the enemy." And they have this little moment where they kind of agree for the first time for a while. It's a nice little sequence. Remarkably, that's not even the ending of that episode, but it's a nice second act finisher going into the end of that episode.
Yeah.
Another Ali thing I liked was the inclusion of the modern music. So you got AC/DC punk bands like the Damned and the Clash, and in between using Noel Coward and Vera Lynn.
The use of contemporary and punk and some AC/DC was really quite fun. I like that. I appreciate that.
I thought it was fun.
There's lots I'll mention later on when we talk about final thoughts, but that is one of the things that I thought that's quite good, and that comes from Peaky Blinders, doesn't it? They do that kind of contrasting with period.
It's just a postmodern thing, isn't it? It's just a thing that you do, and it for contemporary audiences, I think it can help convey something a little bit easier because you're using like, okay, so they're rebels, it's a punk, it's a rebellious nature. Okay, like it fits. I really like that. I know there's some people who are annoyed about it, but it's a drama made in 2022. It's going to use modern editing. It's going to use modern techniques of film and drama making, TV filmmaking. So it works. I also like the way that Italian troops were depicted because there's not many depictions of British fighting the Italians. There's probably not really 2 films I can think off the top of my head.
What are they, Rob?
9 Men.
9 Men.
9 Men again. Yeah.
Okay.
It's so pivotal.
There's our weekly 9 Men mention there.
I only watched it again last weekend. Crikey, we're addicts. And I think maybe they pop up in Sea of Sand as well? I think so.
They might do. Yeah.
But there's not many.
No, there are a couple of films that do depict it though, but there's not many. You are
and
right.
That goes for the LRDG as well, because they're only depicted in Sea of Sand.
Very true.
Maybe something else in a Blink and You'll Miss It cameo. And there's also a Blink and You'll Miss It cameo of Sea of Sand in the series.
That's another aspect I like of the inclusion of these little bits of contemporary footage, and then also some footage from Sea of Sand.
Yeah. Because Alfie Allen says it. He says no one's gone through the Sea of Sand, and I was doing he said it. He said the name of the thing and the thing, which was nice. I mean, even if this gets people to watch more Sea of Sand again, like that would be great.
Yeah,
I know Talking Pics put it up last 2 weekends ago. I had it on, so I mean, hopefully it gets the audience because it's a great little film. Anything else before we move on to favourite scenes?
No, I think that covers it for the Alley Tally this week.
Hello, Robbie here. Did you know you can support the podcast on Patreon? Join the supporting cast today and gain access to exclusive perks, such as discount codes, our monthly Patreon film votes, and the chance to get exclusive merchandise before anyone else. Search Fighting on Film on Patreon or find the link on our website. Thank you. Now back to the show.
Rob, what was your favourite scene?
It's hard because it's a series and we don't really do
there's
TV.
A lot here.
Yeah, we're sort of truncating a 6-episode series into an hour's worth of podcast. So I found it hard to pin an actual scene, but I like at any time where they're bombing around in the Jeeps, having fun, being SAS in Jeeps. That's nice because it just shows that they're coming together as a unit. They're growing as comrades. I really like that. And then we've already talked about it. That the most affecting moment is after the raid on Benia. The silence falls over after they've had their raid, and they can reflect a little bit. I like the editing of when I think it's in episode 3. Or is it episode 4? Maybe the start of episode 4 where they're having it's not a competition, but it's sort of poised as one where they're seeing if Paddy can. How many trucks or Jeeps is Paddy going to blow up? How many is Jock going to blow up? And you get this scene where you can see explosions on the ridge line, and there's this check, like a tally chart that's going up and down. Yeah. I quite like that.
Yeah, I like that
mainly
too.
For me, things that I like were editing choices. When they
stylistic stuff.
Yeah, stylistic stuff. So they introduce the characters, and you get like a blue overlay, and it comes up with Jock Lewis. Yeah,
unit.
Your name and unit. I like that. And at the end, when one of the French guys gets captured, it told you where and when. I quite like that because it's just enough. It's just enough historical information there. Just enough.
I like the map overlays too. There's a number of map overlays.
They were nice. They were like Dad's Army-esque with the arrows.
I was about to say that. Yeah, definitely. There was a definite Dad's Army nod, especially in episode 6 where they show all the different raids going off.
Yeah, that's cool.
One scene. Yeah, exactly. Definitely. And we can't forget PT 116 also does that really great technique as well.
It does. Yeah.
With the complete ahistorical map.
Oh God, you're never gonna let that go, are you?
No, any excuse to just
dash that
dunk on PT 116. I mean,
really unfair.
I know. One thing that stood out to me as well was I was really pleased with the way they handled the very first raid they attempt, the airborne raid where they try and parachute.
Yeah.
I really liked how they handled Sterling's hubris with going ahead with the jump. I thought Swindells portrayed that really well. I thought it was handled quite nicely. I appreciated the visceral depiction of the absolute clusterfuck that it was.
Yes.
With the guys being blown off course, striking the rear of the aircraft,
people
being
hitting
dragged
rocks
across the desert, hitting rocks painfully, and also that scene with Sterling where he has to put one of his men out of their misery. It was very affecting. I thought it was very. I haven't read Ben McIntyre's book, so I haven't read a great deal around the SAS. I know enough to be going to know the
this is the
major
thing about this series.
and
You don't
aspects of it.
You don't need to know a massive amount going in. Obviously, it helps, but I don't think we need to restrict movies and things like that. Saying, "Oh, you haven't read the book, so how can you possibly watch a series?" I think that's.
It's not a prerequisite.
It's not a prerequisite. Yeah, exactly. I think it's
you can definitely go into
gatekeepy.
this, and it definitely makes you want to go and dig up a bit more. And was Randolph Churchill really in Benghazi?
Things like that,
and that kind of stuff. And he was. That raid is really interesting in the way they depict it in the series, though. Talk about that in a moment.
I think that very well did it.
That scene where they depict the complete failure of that mission, I was really pleased with how they attempted to convey that and show that, while they might be rogue heroes, they weren't infallible. And that plays into the way that they represent all three of the main characters in those first 3-4 episodes. I think they get the balance of trying to show that these men were actually really complex.
Yes. Yeah, you
quite
do get
well.
That. I think you get it enough. And there's only so much you can do over 6 episodes. And you've got so many men to sort of cover. And this isn't it's not a Band of Brothers-y type thing where everyone was being laser beamed in on. It's just trying to give you that overview of people. And it's hard to write the way people want these people to be written. It's hard to do that in 6 episodes of a TV series where you've got to level everything out. You've got to give everything enough time, but not too much time, because you've got to remember that this is a piece of populist media. It's for the BBC Sunday night crowd. This is a Peaky Blinders replacer, and some things are going to get left, some things are going to get turned on to a little bit more than maybe they should. But at the end of the day, it is a piece of media for everyone to enjoy. It's a very nuanced conversation that we're not going to be able to answer entirely on this show, but I think it's good that we mention that going forward.
Oh, definitely. Another scene that stood out to me was the airfield mess shoot 'em up scene, which is in the trailer. Paddy, they've destroyed most of the aircraft, and then Paddy decides to go into the mess. They've put timed explosives on all the aircraft, and Paddy then decides to go into the mess, and he makes the correct assumption that it's the men as well as the material that is important to take out. And 3 guys, I think Theo's there and someone else. I can't remember which character is. Might be in Reg. Anyway, they shoot up the mess. The Germans, they open the door and the Germans they go silent. The Germans all look at them and they open up and cut down the entire mess. And it's almost Inglourious Bastards like in that respect.
It reminded me of the airport scene from Wild Geese.
Wild Geese, I was about to say that as well, and Dark of the Sun a little bit.
Yeah.
Just for the sheer carnage of that scene. And that's when I knew that the series wasn't going to pull its punches with
No.
with the visceral nature of
And the
commando
morality of
warfare.
that as well. Like grey area. Is it a crime? Is it
Mhm.
is it justified? Is it they played with it just enough to give the audience the opportunity to answer the question rather than the show doing it, which I thought that was quite good. So, I mean, final thoughts?
Yeah, lots to talk about again. Oh, one thing I forgot in when we're talking about the alley tally. Jenny Grant on Twitter mentioned that there's a Per Una dress which Jock Lou's fiance is seen wearing, which is about 30 years too soon.
Oh, right. I'd never have known.
Neither would I, but I thought I'd mention that because that tickled me. We're all rivet counting in our own way, Rob.
Yeah. Well, at least it's not like Downton Abbey where there was like electricity pylons everywhere and like sky dishes and stuff. It wasn't that bad, remember that being a thing. Or there wasn't a cup of Starbucks coffee like there was in that Game of Thrones thing. Everything.
Or the dude in Gladiator that's wearing jeans.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no one's running around in a pair of Adidas Sambas in this, are they? It's not quite that bad. So I'm going to go through the things I liked first. I think I mentioned them before. It's the editing I liked. I did like the casting. I don't think, because I remember when this was coming out, I remember everyone was like, oh, we should get Tom Hiddleston. Oh, we should get Tom Hardy. Oh, Benedict Cumberbatch. I'm like, this is the conversation we had last week on the 100th episode of AMA. All the people you would want are too old. Yeah. There was a period of time where Tom Hardy probably would have been the spit of Paddy Mayne, with the right makeup and the right angle and all that. But he's too old now.
Tom Hiddleston would have made a great Jock Lose.
Yeah, probably would have, but he's too old. And you've got to cast what works now. For me, I think it was top notch. I don't know how you would do better at the moment. And I'm glad we finally have. I mean, even if it's not 100% to everybody, but we finally got, after how many years after Band of Brothers, when everyone's banging on about going, I want a Second World War series with the British people in it. I want it so badly. You finally got it.
Yeah. This is it. That's the main crux of it, isn't it? We've wanted it for so long, and we get it.
And now we get it. And sometimes you can wish too hard and you might not enjoy it. But I did. I really did.
Yeah.
And hopefully more can come out of this. Who's to say that Channel 4 don't go away and try and make one now? Who's to say ITV don't have a crack? Who's to say Sky don't? Rogue Heroes work. Let's do it with, I don't know, the RAF, or let's do it with the Navy.
Yeah. Let's adapt The Cruel Sea.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah,
you could do it. You could do like a limited run series of The Cruel Sea.
Or let's do The Ship by C.S. Forrester, something different. Or do let's make Arnhem Lift into a series. Like, come on.
Don't, Rob, don't. I can only rub my knees so hard. God.
Red Berets, Parachute Heroes, BBC, 9:00, Sunday nights.
The material is there.
There is, yeah. And this is the thing. I think it should.
There's no reason why people can't do it.
More can come out of this, and I really hope it does. It's a thing for me. This could have been a train wreck, and I don't think it is. And I think, for the demographic that it's going for that Peaky Blinders audience. If you can capture them, whip that up again, then you've done quite well. Yeah. But what about you? Is there anything before we go into negatives? Because I have a couple. Have you got any likes?
Plenty of likes. So yeah, I was impressed by the scale. That budget you mentioned earlier on, you can clearly see it on the screen. They've made every penny of it work for them. I was impressed by the visceralness of it in scenes, the blood from the sentries' mouths when they get stabbed in some of the episodes is a really interesting inclusion. I thought the finale was really ambitious, showing all of those various different raids.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was great. A lot of the casting was really strong. I was a bit concerned about the characterization of Mayne as well, but I think that paid off really well. They showed him as a nuanced individual with showing his intellect, but also his fiery anger. The introduction to him is a little bit off me. I don't know whether he would have really done all that to those MPs in a prison cell when he's introduced. But I think they're just trying to hammer home instantly that this is a man of raw energy and aggression.
emotion. I think I prefer him halfway through because it tones down a little bit.
Yes.
And I think episode 2 and 3 they do tone it down, but then when he's training the French, they tone it up a bit more, and that's where I turn off a little bit because I'm like, this just is a bit anger for anger's sake.
They play on his first experience of combat, fighting French troops, Vichy French troops.
Of
so
course.
that comes in.
Yeah,
that comes into play a little bit there. But
yeah,
I like how he quotes poetry. He's shown reading a lot. He's shown trying to learn the piano. He has a touching friendship with his friend who joins him when he enters the SAS.
Because that's that thing of like addressing what some people have been upset about the portrayal. But you got to remember that this is just one writer's. It is just one writer's like adaptation of or characterization of a person. Yeah. So another writer may have tackled it completely differently. So
absolutely.
Please continue, Matt. Sorry for jumping in there.
No, not at all. I felt that we could have done with more Jock Lewis. I enjoyed Alfie Allen's portrayal of him, and I thought the balance they got of the three individuals that were probably most responsible for the formation of the SAS, I thought they handled that balance well. But then from episode 3, where Jock's killed, I felt that, I don't know, I just felt that they undermined the character a little bit with some of the added scenes they have with his fiancée in like a flashback, and he hallucinates where she kind of declines his wedding, his marriage proposal. And how did they know that? Where did that come from?
I know, I'm not too sure.
It's not in a letter because he's died. He can't go, oh, when I was dying, I had this really visceral hallucination that you declined my marriage proposal.
Yeah, I get it.
It's artistic license to a high degree.
I really like Alan's portrayal of Jock because he was the doer, if you know what I mean. He was the one that's like, right, we're going to get this, we're going to get the parachutes, we're going to get this, I need men to do this, I need guys to do this. And then you had Paddy being Paddy, and then you had David Stone being like, oh, I want to make this unit, and it's going to be so good, and we're going to be all known throughout the land as the SAS. But then but Lewis was the one that was actually like driving it all.
Yeah, how does Paddy characterize it? The madman, the dreamer, and the I can't remember how he describes it now, but the doer is a good good way of describing it. Yeah. I enjoyed the way that the character was portrayed and developed, but then I felt the conclusion of his arc was a little bit underwhelming.
Can have that, yeah.
But yeah, overall I enjoyed it, and I've got a few things I can criticize if we want to move into those.
Yeah, why not?
I felt the pace of the last 2 episodes was a bit rushed. And I know that you had an issue with the way that the series truncates the timeline and
a bit here and there. So that there was a few things that I wished could have been a little bit more explored, like like Yves Monceau's arc of getting the French into the SAS to help them. Was over by the end of episode 4, but then I think she hung around just a bit too long. But then when
there's a love interest,
he has a love interest, and I was like, that's fine, but it wasn't played upon enough for me.
I thought the off-screen death of her character was a serious disservice. I thought Boutella brought a lot to the role, and although a lot of people have an issue that she wasn't an actual real person, and didn't have a hand in the creation of the SAS. I mean, she doesn't actually have a hand in the creation of the SAS in the show. She's there to try and get more French troops into action and involved with the commandos.
She's plot device she's just to get the story moving a bit more and stuff.
It is, and it adds a little bit of female representation into the show, which has 0.
Yes, true.
Which is needed. And people might go, oh, it's unneeded, it's unnecessary. I'm like, well, it didn't hurt the program. I think
no, it didn't.
They could have ended their arc sooner, which would have,
I think so.
Freed up more time for other elements of the story.
She could have just gone back to England to help the Gauls. Yeah, like it would have been an issue.
Could have given us like a brief cutscene of her on board the aircraft in turbulence. Even that would have given us something.
Yeah, something.
Because the last time we see her is in the desert where she walks off. And that's it. Maybe that was a production thing. Maybe that was a necessity.
Could have been. 100% could have been. Yeah. And then this is my thing as well. Talking about Yvonne Su and getting the French in. When they bring the French in, I'm like, these guys were part of El Detachment, or they created their own French SAS.
And there were other nations involved in the SAS,
of course, yeah. So when they come in, I didn't like maybe just because I've seen too many war movies at this point. I didn't like the tropey element.
You can't say that, Rob. You can't say that on Fighting on Film, Britain's best war movie podcast. You can't say that.
No. So Paddy was like beasting them, and I've seen that in so many things. And I was just like, okay. And you give them all like little character tropes, like I'm the hand grenade. You throw me where the enemy's most numerous and let me go. Like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a bit.
Wasn't there a blade guy?
Yeah. He's the knife
yeah.
guy. Yeah. I was
that was a massive trope.
This one's the hacker or something. I was expecting it to go like, he's good with wireless sets or whatever. But then they're really underused, and they only finally accept them in right at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
And then when they finally get into action, it all goes belly up for them. But I was thinking you could have just showed them as being a little bit more integral than because they actually were. And then as you said about the pacing, I think the middle of episode 4 after Jock's death, it really doesn't know where to go. And it was a little bit off for me. 5 sort of lost it a little bit, but then 6 did wrap it up nicely. So
I think the issue with 5 was they repeat a lot of the raids, and it becomes a little disjointed in that I know they're trying to illustrate that they went to raid similar and the same airfields again, and the Germans had put defenses in place and stuff and made it more difficult. But I thought that could have been handled on screen a little bit better.
Why did they not show what happened when they did take Randolph Churchill along? Because it went a bit wrong.
Yeah.
So why didn't they show that? And then you could have had a nice scene where Sterling is chatting to Churchill and he'd be like, well, my boy didn't think, my boy could have been killed, blah, blah, blah. You could have had a nice little chat.
Yeah.
And Sterling you could have had Sterling.
The raid was a failure, but Churchill had such an incredible experience with Sterling on the raid.
Yeah.
He didn't care that it was a failure.
There could have been a nice little moment.
It was an amazing experience. Yeah. These men are doing incredible things just because they didn't manage to sink the ship they were trying to.
It would have been great if that had all gone belly up and they'd have got out of it on the skin of their teeth, and they go, oh, you're probably going to go back to your dad now and say that we're not worth it. And he turns around and goes, oh, I thought it was bloody great fun, chaps. Like, I couldn't think of anything more fun.
Yeah.
You could have had that. That just was a tiny little thing there for me. And I would have liked...
some people... Sorry, go on.
No, it's fine.
I saw some people questioning the need for Churchill to appear, but if he hadn't appeared, we wouldn't have had the line, just how serious is your cock and arse condition?
That was funny. But then we wouldn't have had Jason Watkins' go at Churchill, because I love it when new actors get the chance at Churchill, because it's seen as like this massive role to have. I always love every 3 or 4 years we get that, oh, this person's playing Churchill. Let's go back through all the different Churchills we've ever seen. No, I do like that. So we can add him onto we'll have to do a Premier League table of Churchills. Who's going to make Europe? Who's going to be relegated?
Right there. Yeah, it's a special.
Yes, yeah. That may be our World Cup special. Who knows? And then maybe just it was another thing where this was just underdone for me. I would love to have just seen a bit more of Tobruk, because I think that was quite well done.
Yeah. Because it's such an integral part of the whole series. You talk about taking the pressure off Tobruk throughout the whole thing.
I know. It would have been nice.
They don't really talk about it falling a great deal.
You can hear it in the background on a radio thing in episode 4 or 5.
It's a plot device, so I would have liked to see more. But I was impressed we saw, some of the defense of it and the actual port. It was nice to see some of it, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was, exactly. It was good. It was represented, at least. And then finally, before I'll ask a question to round out the episode, finally for me, I just think Dominic West was a bit underused. And I think,
I agree there.
Can we please have a
Dudley Clark series?
Can we have a Dudley Clark series or a Dudley Clark biopic with West, please? Because that guy did so much. It was really interesting.
He was having fun with the role in the first 2 episodes, and you could see it. He comes in drag, and he just brushes it off, and the goings on in Cairo are interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's loads that you could cover. His role in the creation of the SAS as a phantom unit is really interesting. But West is great in it for what he is, but then they kind of don't know what to do. His characterization seems to meander. So he goes from eccentric to a drunk to not a drunk to somewhat resentful to bearer of bad news.
Yeah, and then him and Sterling have a bit of a tiff, and then you ever see him again.
Yeah. That's one of the flaws of the show for me. The underuse or the misuse of West.
But then again, as we say, this all could have been down to the issues they had when they filmed in Morocco. Who knows? It's a hard thing to say.
And what we get of him, I enjoyed.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I say I want more, because I think he was really interesting as that character.
Spin-offs already.
Yeah, oh, please. Yeah. Maybe they'll do it like they, when
Just do it Rogue Heroes, and then it's an anthology series. This week it's Dudley Clark.
Imagine that, yeah. Like
I'm going to pitch this to Stephen Wright. I'm going to email him right away.
Get Steve Knight on the email. So before we round out the episode, I thought it might be fun because people have talked about a second series online and what that could entail. So
hope it gets it.
I do really hope it does. I mean, I hope it has even half the success that Peaky Blinders has had. But Matt, what would you like from a second season?
So obviously at the end of the first season, Sterling is captured as he was in the desert. And there's a lot more of his story that we could see, even though he has been captured, because he escaped from the German capture and then was recaptured by Italians, and then he was sent to Colditz. So it will be really interesting to see a little bit of Sterling's story told alongside what's happening with the rest of the regiment in perhaps the Aegean, in Greece, and around there in season 2. I think that'd be a really good. It doesn't have to be throughout the whole series. It can be just a few episodes. Shows his time in Colditz, but maybe that'd be too much of a stretch. I don't know, or maybe it's what they've got in mind.
I think it'd be a shame not to see. Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. I think it'd be a shame not to see Swindells again in the role, because he clearly, gave his all to it. And I think, so as you said, I think you should have him in Colditz, or him getting to Colditz at least. Book, end his arc with him going into Colditz. Maybe, have a bit of dramatic license with him escaping and being recaptured. You could drag that out for a couple of episodes, surely. And then on the flip side, where you get your action element of it and the SAS element of it, where you show Paddy Mayne coming to be the major, and maybe that's where you get the character change. Perhaps he's still this absolute mad lad, for want of a better word. He can go and duff people up, and he's a brave, heroic hero. But then he's also this nuanced leader who's got to really think about the men under his command now. He has a lot more responsibility. So there is a lot you could explore there with Mayne. And I think possibly I think Jack O'Connell can carry this on his own. I think Swindells can carry this on his own. But I think they're the two guys that you bring in. And I don't know. Do you bring in another name? Do you create a guy who comes in and he's another named actor? It's interesting to see where they go. I think maybe
it will be interesting.
You follow Mayne into Sicily and Italy and show that area of it.
They got to. Season 3 is Northwest Europe, concluding with the release of Swindells from the Colditz.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Paddy Mayne in Belgium as a colonel.
And there's a couple of chaps in there that do go straight through to the end of the war. So there you've got constant characters who we can learn more about and develop upon. And then maybe, as you said, season 3 Northwest Europe, and if we're really lucky, if we're incredibly lucky, we might get an Iranian embassy siege series, and then we do 3 episodes on the embassy siege, and they do 3 episodes on the Pebble Island raid in 1982. Because if you think the editing is fun now, you could have so much fun with that sort of SAS hero worship that you get after the embassy siege. So much could be done there. Yeah, it's got legs, and I hope they let Shankland and Knight
just a really dramatic shot of the lads on the balcony to David Bowie's Heroes.
That would be fun. Yeah, there's so much you could do, Matt. hit us up Stephen, if you need some help with devising these. Not probably that you do at all, but we're always here. We're always here at FOF HQ. So I mean, hopefully you enjoyed SAS Rogue Heroes as much as we did. Hopefully you're looking forward to a second season, and I know that we are. But we are talking to, at the end of this week, it will go out in a couple of weeks' time. We're talking to an independent filmmaker called Toby Kearton, who has created some really good war movie shorts and worked on the Wolves of War film that we covered a few months ago. So we'll be interviewing him about his career in film and what it takes to create these independent war films in 2022. So I think that'll be a really interesting discussion.
It will be.
We'll catch you next week, folks. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
Bye.